Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. Well, in this week's guitar lesson, I wanted to include something for everyone. So there's a lead part, which you can do if you're feeling up to that, but you don't have to do that. You can stick to just the rhythm if you want to do that. And the rhythm is a classic rock, kind of blues rhythm. There's some Robin Trower influence, there's some Muddy Waters, there's some Eric Clapton. It's just your classic sort of blues trio scenario. So the jam track is just bass and drums, and you're going to be filling in all the guitar parts. That's a great way to practice. It really helps with your sense of feel and your sense of timing to be a guitar player in a trio, and I thought this would be a good way to practice. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video we're going to take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half, as well as download the tablature and the MP3 jam track so that you can practice all your timing, you can get that by going to ActiveMelody.com, go to the lessons page, and do a search for EP206. So let's go ahead and get started with part one. Alright, so if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube to subscribe to this channel. I put out new lessons every Friday. I've been doing it like clockwork for about 6 years now. I never miss. So that's a great way for you to stay in touch. Alright, so one of the things that I failed to mention in the intro is that this is a one chord blues. It's just an E chord through the whole thing. It's not a 1-4-5, just a one chord. And since the rhythm track is just a trio and you've got a bass that's hitting an E note over and over again, that's the only other reference you have to the key that you're in. So you as the rhythm player are going to be defining this song as either major or minor. And we're going to be playing a little bit of both. We'll be straddling the fence in this lesson. So it'll be a great way to understand the importance of a rhythm section in a trio like this and how you can really shape and color the song. So let me talk through tone settings. I always get questions on this. I've got I have two pedals. One's a Zen drive that I'm using for overdrive. You don't have to have that. You can just plug straight into your amp and turn up your overdrive that way. But that's what I'm using, and I've got the 4 dials. I've got the volume on 3, the tone on 7, the gain on 7, and then the voice on about 5. The other pedal that I'm using is a Strymon Timeline, total overkill. That's a delay pedal. And I'm using it for a little bit of slapback delay, just to fatten the tone a little bit. You could use any delay pedal if you want that effect. So that's the effects that I'm using. Let's talk about the song. So I mentioned it's in the key of E, and the first thing that I do is I make an E chord down in first position. And I'm going to play the bottom part of the chord and then the top part of the chord. When I play the bottom part, I'm going to do a downstroke. So I'm hitting the bottom 2, 3 strings. I think in the tab I put 3 strings, but that's what I'm doing. I'm hitting it, and then I'm truncating the sound like that by taking this part of my palm and resting it on the strings. Now the next thing I do is an upstroke on strings 1 and 2. So you got the downstroke, upstroke. So it goes like that. And you can see how I'm killing the sound. It's just quick little bursts, and then I truncate it with my hand. Now the next thing that happens is this thing, which is really cool. It's a very dramatic sounding bend and release, and it happens here with, I use my middle finger on the 2nd fret 3rd string. Just pick it once, bend, release. I'm trying to do a full bend. It's kind of hard to do because you're so close to the nut down here, but that's what I'm trying to hit. And then there's a little hammer-on pull-off that happens on the 1st fret 3rd string. Now, by adding this note, that makes it major. That note is minor. So this is your 3. So when you have, in your major scale, 1, 2, 3, if it's a flatted 3rd, it's a minor. If it's the 3rd itself, then it's the major. So by going like this is what I mean by straddling the fence. Is it major, is it minor? You're kind of wavering when you do that. For example, if I just hit the one, if I didn't add the index finger there, listen. See how minor that sounds? Sounds like an E minor chord versus major, happy. So that's the first little bit that we learned. Now, think of this as a call and response. So we're going to have a, if that's the call, the response is going to be, and we're going to use the same response over and over and over again. And so that the response is going to be. So it starts on the 6th string with a downstroke. Then I take my middle finger and I slide from the 2nd fret to the 3rd fret on the 6th string. And those are both downstrokes. And then I do an upstroke by fretting the 2nd fret 4th string. So looks looks like that, and then we're back to the low 6th string. Now you'll hear that repeated over and over again as we play licks, all kinds of licks and little chords and things. Every time I go back to that same response. And that happens intentionally. It helps kind of ground the song to me when you're writing a song like this, or even if you're just in a jam, to keep going back to a phrase. It's comforting to somebody that's listening. You know, we want to find something to latch onto when we listen to music, and that to me creates that in a trio scenario. So you can see I keep going back to it. So that's how we started. So from the beginning, and then I did it again. Now the second time through, we switched it up and I went. This is a really cool blues lick, and there's a little bit of a swagger to it. So if you're not playing it straight, you're not going. You can hear how it, from a timing perspective, it starts on the beat and then it kind of swaggers. So you just kind of play around with a feel for that. But the way that I'm fretting it, and by the way, I should point out where all these notes are coming from, so that makes sense. I think a lot of you probably already figured that out. But when I'm playing, this is just the major the minor pentatonic scale for the key of E. However, when you do that, you're going back and forth between minor and major. So that's the one point where that changes. But when we come up here, this is just minor pentatonic scale pattern 2. Pattern 2 is right there, right? And that's what I'm doing. I'm playing these two notes, so that's a hammer-on between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret on the 2nd string. But I'm also hitting the open E string, the open 1 string. See how cool that sounds? I got that from Jimmy Vaughn. He does that all the time. But, you know, he'll use a capo and play that lick, but I always hear him doing that, and it just sounds cool. Very, very bluesy thing. So it's down, down, up. That's strings 1 and 2 again. Index finger on the 3rd fret. Then I do a downstroke on the 4th fret 3rd string. And then right back down to this little thing. And now we go back to the response. And then I repeated it again. So you can see how there's all these little familiar phrases. They keep repeating. And you'll notice that in any blues. You know, the first verse and then, you know, the second verse is always a repeat of the first. And that's intentional. It hooks you from the beginning. Now this is the point in the song where I come up and start playing some chords, and what we're going to do is we're going to play an E minor chord in different voicings all the way down the neck. And this to me has a Robin Trower type feel. I thought about using my full tone Deja Vibe pedal to kind of get his feel, but what I'm doing for this is, so it starts with that, and all that is this is the 12th fret here, so I slide up to the 14th fret, just barring the first 3 strings, and then concluding there on the 12th fret, first 3 strings, and you can see what that is. That's some E minor chord. Top 3 strings out of the E minor chord that you know down in first position. This is just at an octave higher. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to walk my way down through different voicings of the E minor. So from here we have, now we go back to the response, and then I come to this version. Now look at what I'm doing. It's just a stair step to play this. I'm landing here on the 7th fret 1st string with my index finger, my middle finger's on the 8th fret 2nd string, ring fingers on the 9th fret 3rd string. And this, if you look at the bar chord version of the, which is where you take the A minor chord and you slide it all the way up, that's what we're doing. We're just playing the top 3 strings out of that. Instead of making the whole chord, I think it's easier sometimes to grab the 3 notes that you need to make the chord. That way you can also go give it some vibrato. I like to do that, and so that's why I would make the chord that way versus this way. But either way would be right. So E minor, E E minor. Now we're going to come down here and do it. And this time I'm playing 4 strings, but you could continue just playing 3 strings if you wanted. I play 4 strings because it's easier for me to grab. So what I'm doing is these 3 fingers, well actually let me just dissect it this way. This is a D, think of the D minor chord in first position, slide it up 2 frets. That's what this is. And then you just take your ring finger and put it down here on the 5th fret 4th string. And that's another way to make a minor chord. And that chord is easy to grab for me because I think of these 3 fingers as the D7 chord shape that had just happened to be, you know, bumped down a set of strings, and then you just add your index finger. And that's easier for me to grab than trying to think of that D minor chord shape. That's just me though. So from the 1st to E minor, you can see each time I'm just sliding up 2 frets and then concluding where it needs to be. So that's your E minor chord. In this case, your index finger will be on the 3rd fret. And then the last one is exactly the same thing that we started with, but it's played down here, an octave lower. And I just played string 3 there, and then took everything off and hit the top 3 strings to create the E minor chord. So you can see how as a rhythm player, you're defining the song as minor by playing, because the bass is just playing the same E note over and over again. So had I gone into major chords, it would have had a totally different feel. It would have went, you know, something like that. Very different, but you could do that. You know, you could do that way too. So you might want to even play around with that when you're practicing with a jam track, just to get a different feel for it. Okay, so that's a lot of information, and you can see how we're coming up with this. This is pretty basic stuff, just an E minor chord repeated, and then we're playing some minor pentatonic licks down here. Let me back up, and we'll play everything from the beginning, and that will actually wrap up this part 1 video. And I saved all the lead stuff, the single string lead stuff, for the second video, so we'll just start breaking that down in that video. Here we go from the beginning. Alright, so make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube and subscribe to my channel. I've been putting out guitar lessons like this every Friday for about 6 years now, so lots of in-depth lessons. Feel free to leave a comment. I do respond to most of them. I read them all. And like this video. I know that's cliche at this point, but it does help me, and it also keeps you in touch.